Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by DKI Canada. Across the street, across the country. Hockey fans of all types are going to enjoy this. He put together a collection of Leafs memorabilia that's going to blow your mind. Mike Wilson, Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Coming up! Our guest today hails from Toronto. He's a former minor league hockey player. He worked in securities on Bay Street. He is an author, a philanthropist, a sports collector extraordinaire. By the BroBible, he has the second best man cave in the world. He's been featured on CTV, City TV, TSN, CBC, Sportsnet, ESPN. He has the greatest collection of Leafs memorabilia of all time. The ultimate Leafs fan, Mike Wilson. Welcome to the program, Mike. Good to have you here.
Well, great. I'll come on every time if I get an introduction like that every time, Joe. My goodness. Thanks for that.
Every time, brother. You deserve it. So we want to know, of course, what helped inspire your Maple Leafs passion?
Well, I'm 71 years old now. So growing up in the late 50s and early 60s, there wasn't any Blue Jays or Toronto Raptors or any soccer teams or anything like that. It was the Toronto Argonauts in the summer and the Maple Leafs in the winter. And you spent most of our time then outside playing. There was no internet. So playing hockey on the outdoor rinks, out on the street, in the backyard, in the basement, that's all we did. And, the games would come on Saturday night. They'd start at 9:00 in those days. So I'd get to watch probably one period. And it just started from there. And the guys on the street would collect hockey cards. You'd clip the articles out of the newspaper, which would show up at 4:00 or 5:00 in the afternoon, not in the morning in those days. And we would all just sort of trade cards and collect different things, the cereal boxes, the coins, the sheriff coins, all that stuff. Right. Just because there was really nothing else to do. There was only 6 teams, 120 players, and we would have contests on the street who could name every player in the league, which we all basically could. So it was no different than anybody else growing up. Mine just seemed to extend a little bit further as time went on.
Yeah, you never let go of it. Well, listen, I remember my dad worked for Coca-Cola. So do you remember the original 6 teams, the Coke caps with all the players on them?
Sure do.
So I collected those, and my dad helped me get all the caps. But I had every player, every team in the plastic container, and I have no idea whatever happened to it. But at one time, I had all of that stuff, and it was so cool to put that together. And growing up in Edmonton, I was still a Leafs fan because they were the team. I mean, in being a Canadian boy, you're either a Montreal Canadiens team generally or a Leafs fan. Montreal Canadiens fan or Leafs fan. But of course, my dad was a Detroit Red Wings fan. I don't know how the heck that happened, but I have a story about that. We might get to that. But anyway, you also played a little bit of hockey. Tell us about that.
Well, just like everybody else growing up, all we did was play hockey. Back in those days, it's not like today where I get a laugh because, watching kids grow up today, when you identify a kid, you don't identify him by his age, you identify him by his year. So how old are your kids? Well, I've got a 95, I've got a 96 and a 203, because that's how they identify them as hockey players. But back in our day, you just played hockey on the street, and some of us played at a little higher level, but we weren't allowed to wear hockey jackets to school. So nobody ever really knew what anybody was doing. So I just kind of grew up, started playing, and moved my way up the ranks like everybody else. Ended up playing in Europe, played some Senior A, played out west in the Northwestern Hockey League, and ended up playing for the Orillia Terriers and Barrie Flyers here in Ontario. So, but a little bit of European experience, and it's just a passion to the game, and I kept playing. And a lot of guys like me played along the same ways, and it was a lot of fun. And it certainly helped spiral me into a job on Bay Street for 40 years, because I worked every summer. I came home on an order desk, and it just moved me along and opened up the door for me for a career on Bay Street.
Well, tell us a little bit about your Bay Street career and how that helped you foster this collection of yours and put that together.
Well, the funniest thing is that when I was playing for the William Terriers, when we got eliminated, the Cambridge Hornets were still alive, and they were in the Southern Division and the Senior A League, and they had a very good team. And they picked me up and another player on our team to play with them, and they looked like they had a good shot to go to the Allen Cup, which was in Spokane. But at the same time, I was having a contract problem in Europe, so that's why I was here, and I was staying to play another year. So a guy had gotten me a job on the desk full time. I stayed at Midland Doherty, and then he came to me and said, "Would you like a job at National Trust on the trading desk?" And I didn't even know what it was at the time. So anyway, I went for the interview, but my boss hated hockey and hated sports, but he needed somebody because he had to go on vacation, and his boss wasn't letting him go unless he replaced the person that had left. So I walked in the door, and they had hired a couple of guys from Midland in the past. So he thought I was up to speed to do the job, but I wasn't. So anyway, he basically just hired me without even talking to me. He knew I played hockey, so he kind of grunted at that. But my first couple of days coming in the door, we were still in the playoffs. I got cut here, got a stick in the face, and got an orbital bone hurt. And I got some cuts across my face. So I go up to this executive office, my first day in the job, with almost 2 black eyes, cuts across my face. And I'm hiding. I'm so embarrassed. And he was glaring at me for probably 4 days. So finally, I started playing for Cambridge, and I got hurt again. But I was going to work, and he made some bad comments to me about playing hockey, and you better show up and all this. So I had to go to the team and actually say, I went home and spoke to my dad and said, I got a chance to go to the Allen Cup. And, is this job really that important? And I had to make a decision, and I had to go to the team and say, I don't think I'm going to be able to take a week off to go to Spokane if we get there. So you better get somebody else. And I ended up staying, and I worked my way up the ranks and ended up of a 40-year career in Bay Street as a result. So looks like I made the right decision, but I still regret not playing and getting a chance to play in the Allen Cup, which Spokane won that year, by the way.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. How'd they make out? Okay, but they would have won if you had been on the team.
I don't know about that.
Well, you've written a few books. One of them I recently enjoyed. This one here, the Inside the Room, the Ultimate Sports Fan. Yeah, here we go. And then along co-written with Lance Hornby and our good pal Paul Patsko. Great book. And there you go. A lot of great stories in here. Let's talk about The Room. Okay, when did you start collecting, and what were some of the first items you brought into the room?
Well, it's funny, Joe, because I was just like anybody else. I was collecting all my items, and my first real piece of memorabilia was a game-used Carl Brewer stick. Now, a cousin of ours was best friends with him, and they were actually to go in a monastery together. And he used to go to games with Carl Brewer, and he found out that I was a young little guy, and I loved the Maple Leafs, and so he got me a game signed stick from Carl Brewer, but I would never use it. I'd always take it outside when we were playing ball hockey and put it on the grass out in front of my house, and nobody could touch it, just to show off. But eventually I started using it, but that was my first real piece. And then the second, my uncle got me 2 posters for Frank Mahovich, the old Libby's Beans promotion, where Frank is stopping. If you can see me stopping like this, everybody's seen that poster.
Yeah.
But we used to shop at Loblaws, and this was a Dominion promotion. So my uncle got me 2. My dad drove me out to High Park where they lived. We lived in Scarborough at the time. And he handed me the 2 posters. And my father used to play in the IBM League at Leaside Arena Sunday mornings. So I would go and hang around there. But Frank Mahovich's dad was the skate sharpener. And everybody, I used to hang around the booth looking at Mr. Mahovich and be there all morning. So anyway, he gave me the 2 posters. My dad said, "No, you think this would be a nice thing to give to Mr. Mahovich?" And I said, "No." But the plan was to give one to Mr. Mahovich. So it was the first real color poster I ever had. I posted it on my wall. But in the meantime, before that, we got in a car, drove to Leaside Arena that day, and I'll never forget, we walked downstairs. My dad called Mr. Mahovich. He stepped out of his booth, and he let me speak, and I handed him the poster, and he was a big man. He had his overalls on. He had those, working man's hands. They were cold from being inside the rink. And I had him the poster. He turned around and hung that up in his booth, and it stayed there till the day he retired. And when Frank visited the room, I had the promotional box and the poster, a couple of posters, and he told me the story about that. He said, we have pictures of our family with that poster and that in the background, and I'd given it to him. So it just sort of started. Those were the 2 key pieces. And I remember it just sort of went from there, and I just started acquiring things, and it just never stopped.
Yeah, the Big M. He was my guy. We had him on the show. Such a pleasure and such an honor to have
Yes.
Frank on the show. And yeah, he was man. He was the man. So tell us about some of the items that we can find in the room. Some of the cool items, and like the BroBible rated this as the second best man cave in the world. I can't imagine what number one would look like.
The Bat
But
Cave.
this is pretty fast. The Bat Cave?
It was the Bat
Okay.
Cave.
Okay, wow, this is crazy, crazy. Yeah. So I guess there's incredible number of Leafs memorabilia. You've got other stuff as well, but um, what are the like when you built this room? What was the idea? What was the idea?
So for years, I had all this, the stuff sat in rooms, and I'd have little rooms in houses and stuff like that. So finally, when Deb and I were moving into our final home, it looked like it was going to be, I wanted to have a destination where, and really, Joe, all I wanted was a room to hang my stuff, have some TVs, have a bar, and invite buddies over to watch sports. That was really it. It was really nothing more than that. But we did take it to a little bit of an extreme. The home we had to dig the basement down 3.5 feet so that it would fit. Because the most important thing, every house we went into, the only thing I wanted to see was the basement. And so we were going through all these houses. And the neighborhood we were going to live in, they were older homes. So they had it, the basements would have to be dug out. So we did that. And we had a designer come in. I went to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And it gave me a good excuse, Joe, because anytime Deb and I would go away, I'd always say, well, we got to go and check out what these bars look like so we can get ideas at how we want to design our room. So that gave me a chance to go to a lot of bars and drink a lot of beer and have looks at places.
All right.
But, so we came up with the design. We hired a chap by the name of Ariel Muro, who designed the room with my, obviously, okay and blessing. And we used the Hockey Hall of Fame as some examples for displays. And we decided to do it right. It was going to be a one-shot deal. Did it. I had no idea in the world that it would lead to what it did. But it was just for my own personal satisfaction and to have friends come over and watch sports. And it just bloomed from there.
Well, the door to it all, the dressing room door, which I remember from back in the day, by the way. How was that acquired? And tell us about that. I know a lot of these stories are in the book, but I want to go through this one if you don't mind. Yeah.
Well, the funny part about that story is that, when the gardens closed, it was just a free-for-all. Guys were just taking everything, signs. And I remember one of the executives called me and said, hey, listen, are all these files in here worth anything, Mike? And I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He said, can I make some money on them? I said, sure can. Lock the door and I'll help you with it. And just grab all those files. There's all the contracts and all that stuff are in there.
Wow.
I could definitely make you some money on that stuff. So anyway, I find out that guys were just taking everything. And this door had been taken by one of the workers, but I guess he got it home. And his wife looked at it, so what are you doing with that? That's not going up in here because it is pretty big. Yeah. And he sold it to another guy who contacted me. I looked at it and I knew one day I'd find a spot for it. So I bought it and I sat on it for, a number of years till we designed our room. And it just these type of things kind of follow you around. It's like a good player, I guess, where a puck follows him around the ice. That's not by accident. That's by skill. But in my case, it was more fluky that this stuff would sort of find me all the time. And I got an opportunity to take it and I bought it. And I just kept it. And, it's funny. We had an event one night where we had a bunch of guys that were working out at Station 7, Gary Roberts' old place. And a number of the players come out to visit the room for the first time. And one of the guys was Brad Boyce. And he actually said, I'm enjoying myself so much here looking at your stuff. I'm going to miss my hockey tonight. I said, well, we got to give you something for doing that, Brad. So I'll tell you what, come over here and sign the door. You can be the first guy to sign this. I'm going to get Maple Leafs to sign this door. I just decided on the spot. And he went, no, Mike, no, you don't have to do that. And, sign it. And he did. And over 85 Maple Leafs signed it after that. And we've had all kinds of, anybody associated with the Maple Leafs got to sign the door. And that's really just the history of it.
The great stories in the book. I want to just touch on a couple more. So tell us about the false teeth.
Oh well, that one I did. Okay, that one I didn't get. That's a Paul Pascal story, but so that
Okay.
they weren't mine. But so you
Oh,
gotta
okay.
get that story sort of from Paul to
Right.
go with it. But yeah, there's all kinds of crazy things like that. So that's one you better ask Paul.
Okay, no problem. Doug Gilmour, the dressing room prankster. Talk a little bit about some of that, maybe.
Well, it's really we had so I have a podcast with Rick Vive. Here's my shameless self
Yes.
plug though. So Squid and the Ultimate Leaf fan. You've had Squid on the show, but um, he was the ultimate prankster. And I'll tell you, when we had him on the podcast, I told him, even though you're in your car and talking to us, I'm still nervous that something's going to happen to me because just don't trust you for anything. And
Right.
he told us a story that when he was in Calgary, they were at a New Year's Eve party. And this is the type of guy that he is. Like, he's sitting there, and I think it was Gary I'm not sure, but I think it was Gary Roberts. And he said, come with me for a second. And they went in the neighbor's kitchen. And he goes, well, what are you doing in here? And he says, just quiet, just watch the door for me. He goes in the pantry, pulls all the cans out and starts ripping the labels off all the cans and then threw all the labels away. And then he went back outside and joined the party. So this is the mentality of that guy. So you got to be on your toes all the time because he can get you at any given time, and he's just the king of it. And that's one of that. I'll tell you, they don't get much better than that story.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. That would be a lot of wasted soup there. Well, we're just gonna eat whatever we get. That's what we get.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah, yeah. A lot of great stories. Sawchuck's missing trophy, Mike Palmateer's pad, Sittler's missing jersey. Were you able to get something from that 10-point night?
No. Well, he signed a game sheet to me, but other than that, the sweaters just sold and landed in the hands of a local guy here. It's an anonymous buyer, but they had contacted me to ask about valuation, what they should be paying for it. But it showed up in a large sweater collection in the United States. The guy bought, and then he found out they had the sweater. So after doing a lot of due diligence and research, they identified it as the sweater from that night. So it was just sold. And it sold for $140,000 US.
Wow.
Which I thought was, how do you put a value on that? But there's it's probably within the range, and I expected it to go for around 2 to 250, but that was US dollars, so roughly around 200 Canadian. So it sold for kind of the guesstimate that I had on it.
Well, that's unbelievable. That's crazy. This memorabilia business can be profitable, as you well know. So, you've had a lot of people in the room over the years, and former Red Wings GM Jimmy Devellano went for a tour of the room, and this is from your website. This is what Jimmy had to say. Let's have a listen.
This is indescribable. This house of Mike Wilson's with all these unbelievable memorabilia. I've never seen anything quite as fantastic as this. I need a week to really look at all this to really get full benefits. It's fabulous, just simply incredible.
Jimmy D, great guy. We had him on the show
Yes.
as well, but he seems so enthusiastic about being there and like legitimately excited, wasn't he?
Well, we've become very good friends, and Jimmy has a place in Sarasota. Deb and I have a place in Sarasota, so we spend time with Jimmy. And I just had lunch with him a couple of weeks ago, and he's a great guy. We do have some debates because of course he's from the Red Wings side, me from the Maple Leaf side, so we give it to each other both ways. But we also have the connection because Jimmy was one of the larger shareholders of Maple Leaf Gardens when it got taken out, and he knew of my background on Bay Street. So we do talk about a lot of investments and things along those natures. So we've developed a very good friendship over the last number of years.
Yeah, that was kind of a unique situation, being a Red Wings guy yet having a considerable stake in the Maple Leafs. That was unique, and I'm sure it'd be kind of difficult for the league to accept that in today's world, I would think.
Yeah, you're right. And Jimmy never did want to, he'll tell you, he never wanted to sell his shares at the end because he wanted to keep them because he knew there was upside. And Jimmy's a very savvy investor. He's made a lot of investments over the years, which won't get into here, but a number of in sports side. And he recognized the fact that our Leaf fans won't like this, but he recognized the fact that Harold Ballard was not going to spend the money on the hockey team and the money was going to flow to the bottom line. So he just saw this thing as a cash cow. And he thought, there's upside in this investment. all along. So he just kept buying as much stock as he could. And he ended up acquiring, it was very thinly traded. There wasn't a lot of big float in the marketplace, but he did acquire a decent position. And he just recognized the value and the hidden value in the stock. And he just ran with it and he made a nice pass on it. But he would have made probably 10 times more if he'd held on to it. So it's a little bit of a sore subject with him too. And of course, in today's world, he wouldn't have been allowed to do that.
Right. But you know what? He did all right. I think he did all right. Jimmy D's had a pretty good life, and I think he's pretty he can be pretty satisfied with what's transpired for him. I know you've had a lot of at least team ceremonies and other ceremonies in the room. Tell us about some of those.
Wow. Well, Joe, I always used to like to think that everybody came to my house to see me, but I was, very sad to learn that they were usually coming to see Debbie or some of the players we had. But all kidding aside, some of the events we've had, we've raised a lot of money. We're very proud of the fact that, we got way too much credit for what we did. All we did was host the events. It's National Hockey League hockey players are the absolute best. Guys like Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr, Phil Esposito, Brendan Shanahan never refused any one of our events and showed up all the time. Larry Tannenbaum, Rick Vive, Daryl Sittler, all these guys would give their time and show up and help support our events. And that would push them over the top. So over the years, we hosted, and the number we raised well over $2 million at our home. It was probably maybe closer to $3 million. And we would host these events. We'd have maybe 100 to 120 people we'd hold in our house. And, we use the Outback. But we had Chris Hadfield showed up one time. He wanted a personal tour, and we brought him and his family in and I gave a presentation with Paul Pasco on his great-grandfather, who was a trainer for the Maple Leafs back in the 30s with Conn Smythe, which was a fascinating story to uncover. We had Alan Frew played. We had Brian Burke, the work he did and the credit he doesn't get enough credit for how much he gives back to the community through his charity work. This guy and anything asked of him, he did. And, he would come in, he'd buy stuff he'd not only help support it with me, he'd buy stuff in the auction and give it all back. So you're just running in, it's just a plethora of players. And, any of the musicians that would come over, we had billionaires come into our house and, all these people just stepped up. And so it just shows the great Canadian pride we should have in supporting others. We should tip our hats to that and be very proud of it. And Deb and I are honored. As I used to say, I just open the door and let them walk in and get to tell stories. And for me, that's the enjoyable part of it. But the real credit should go to all those people who made these things happen. And of course, all the people who supported these functions that we had over the years and helped put this money to good use. And I know Deb and I, we did spend a lot of time whenever we would have somebody approach us, and we got approached a lot to raise money. We would always stipulate a couple of things. First, we wanted to have them give us a presentation of where the money was going so we could identify where every dollar was headed. And secondly, once they passed the asset test with us, we would say to them, well, who do you know on your board that has a connection to a celebrity or somebody well-known in the city? Because you have to have a Maple Leaf involved in every event. And that way we could identify, we wouldn't have to say no to everybody or ever say no to somebody if there wasn't a Maple Leaf involved. So we raised money we're involved in a very big one right now with ALS, but we raised everything from bullying in schools to, autism. We helped a couple families with cerebral palsy to help them get operations in the United States, and just anything we could identify that would help. And as long as the people were willing to work with us, we were more than willing to step up and help them as well. But again, I can't say enough about the National Hockey League and the players and anybody associated with it.
That's awesome, Mike. And Berkey, he comes off as a pretty gruff individual, but he's got a pretty soft white underbelly, as they say. He's very, very good. He's very good man when it comes right down to it. So there are what would be your favorite 3 or 4 pieces of all time?
Joe, I get asked this all the time, and I don't want to sound like I'm skating around the answer, but every piece, because usually when people ask me that question, I know you're not asking, but all they want to know is what's the most expensive piece. But to me, as a 6-year-old kid waiting for my mom to come home, and ripping through the groceries to find the Jell-O box, and I didn't even like Jell-O, to say, can we have Jell-O tonight? Open up to see what coin was inside, or collecting the hockey cards and throwing away Bobby Hull and Gordie Howe and all those bad guys and looking just for the Maple Leafs and keeping those and cutting the articles out of the newspaper and then opening up the cereal box and cutting the pictures off the checks box and, getting the peanut butter and emptying the glass and getting the Maple Leaf. All those things, if I wasn't doing all that, none of this would have mattered because that instilled the passion. And that was the sort of foreground to all of this. And that's what gave me the go-ahead to keep extending and bringing back these childhood memories, which all these things should do. And my mantra is that every piece has a story. And if it doesn't have a story, then I have no interest in knowing it, because you wouldn't buy a pair of shoes without knowing where they were made. You wouldn't buy a shirt. You wouldn't buy a car. You wouldn't buy anything. So why should you go and spend hard-earned money on a piece of memorabilia if you don't know the background, you don't know where it's coming from or what it stands for or the significance? So all these things aside, I put into every thought goes into everything I buy. And even today, I still dabble in some stuff. We had Wayne Gretzky's. I got those by fluke. Wayne Gretzky's 51 game point streak skates. I bought them by accident and found out after the fact that they were the actual skates. Wow. We had, some of the jersey. Like one of the best stories, I guess, would have to be that as a kid, I got a tour of the Gardens, and I was probably 8 years old at the time. And I remember my dad would get tickets once or twice a year, and we'd go, and you'd have to stand behind the rope. And both teams dressed on the same side of the Gardens at the time. So you'd watch them go out for the warm-up, and they'd both walk out almost simultaneous, one after, out to the ice. And we'd be behind the rope. And I remember that door would always fly open, and the knob would hit the cement wall, and out would come Johnny Bauer. And that was always a wake-up call for me to see that, because now they're coming on the ice. So all of a sudden, I went for the tour, and we were going around, and we looked at the Gardens, and we got to go in the dressing room. And the first sweater I saw, and he happens to be in the corner here, that picture, George Armstrong sweater. And I don't know why, and Dave Kim was my favorite player. And I went immediately to the sweater, and I looked at it, and there was a security guard there, and I looked to touch, and he goes, "Go ahead, you can touch." So I just felt it, and he goes, "They're made of silk," but they aren't, of course. But he said they're made of silk, and I just looked at that sweater. And fast forward 50 odd years, I had that sweater in my collection and the door. And that's really, for me, going full circle back to what it meant to me. And so those two are very particularly special. They were special memories for me to, see those things as a kid and never dream in a million years I would actually own them one time and had them on display in my house.
Are there any items that you regret letting slip through your silky fingers?
You always do, because there comes a point. The way I look at it is there's always something else comes along. I mean, just like fighters or goal scorers, there's one great one, but there's always another one coming behind. So I always used to think that, I always wanted a 31 sweater. I had a 33, but I didn't have a 31. And I wanted an original one. I wanted the St. Pat's sweater. And of course, all this stuff showed up once I stopped collecting. My collection moved on to the museum. Of course, they always show up then. But I always look for one of those, and I just never could find one. I saw a couple of them on display, but guys would never sell them. And really, over the years, you just make a decision on certain things, and I just moved on to something else. But there was really nothing that I regretted not pulling the trigger on, except maybe at the Gardens auction when I went in. Remember when you went in the front door and all those big murals of all the previous winning Stanley Cup teams were there? So they were auctioning those, and I was at the auction, and I thought they weren't selling for basically anything. They not a lot of money at all. And so I thought, I should buy those and donate them to the Scotiabank, it wasn't Air Canada Center at the time, because they didn't have any hockey stuff. And I thought I should donate those. And I thought, what, heck with that. Let the Leafs can do it themselves. Why am I doing that? And so I looked at those, and I thought I would like one, but those things were big. They're like 8 feet by 6 feet or something. So they take up a lot of space. And I didn't have my room at the time. I was living in another place. So I thought I would like one of those. And I just passed on it. I bought the Tombstone instead, which was my birth year. I bought the 54 one and hung in the dressing room. But the I let those go. So I would say that's the one I would love to have had one of those.
Yeah. So while you've divested much of your collection, first of all, why was that, and who was the buyer?
So yeah, it comes to a point, work's coming to an end. Deb and I are living in we lived in our house. So we got to be, I guess, fairly well known, and people knew where we lived. We could never leave our place empty. We had a house sitter, we'd go out for dinner, and like that, we've got high-end security, and we door to the basement was locked. The side door, we bolted basically shut. It was against safety regulations, but we did that. And there was no windows in the basement, all this type of stuff, cameras, alarms, all that. But if we went away for a vacation, we'd always have to have somebody stay at our house. And we never had an issue. There'd be some autograph seekers hanging around out the front during events. But other than that, there was never any issues. And even then, we would have to have somebody sometimes out the front. But the good thing was the neighborhood we lived in, there was a lot more. There was events like that going on all around the neighborhood. So we really didn't stand out that much. But still, we felt that eventually we've got to move on. We have to have a succession plan. And, we spoke to the Maple Leafs. It was actually, we got involved with the lawyers, and we wanted it on display somewhere. And the museum was doing their 100th anniversary, the Canadian Museum, the Museum of History in Ottawa, on hockey. And they approached us about borrowing a few pieces for it. So they came over to look at the room. And when the curator walked downstairs, she said, "Oh my goodness, we don't want 5 people, we want 100. And anyway, they said something to the effect of, "What are you going to do with this?" As well, it's funny. We're in the middle of some negotiations now with some corporate people, because at some point we have to move this on. And, we're negotiating with some people right now on what to do with it. And she said, "Well, what about us?" And next thing you know, they whisked us up to Ottawa. They've given us tours of all the museums, and they made some presentations. They would allow us to keep it in our name and do all these different things. And anyway, it just progressed from there. But we had, there comes a point, Joe, when you have to move on to the next phase of your life.
Yeah.
And I did. And that led to me taking my ultimate road trip, which I'm sure you are aware of.
Yes. So we're going to get to that momentarily, but you, what kind of money did that bring in, if you don't mind me asking?
So yeah, it's public record. So because it was designated as historical, we had some, and this is one of the reasons why I became a sports appraiser, because the appraisers came in and they were actually supposed to be neutral, but they said they were hired by Ottawa. I said, no, but it's my money too. I have to approve this. Anyway, it was a little over $2 million net, but actual collection was worth $4 million, because if you think about it on the tax basis, it would have been over $4 million.
Wow. That's amazing. So, but you're still involved in the memorabilia business. And how much did you keep? What did you?
So what I did was I kept about 25% of the items, because again, with the appraisers, we couldn't agree on the pricing on some of the items. So I kept we're living in a condo now, but it's a pretty good size, and I've got a room designated to my Maple Leaf stuff. So I'm more involved in paper stuff now. So things like I'm into the photographs, the old photographs that are now authenticated, and it's become a big part of the hobby. Things like tickets to sporting events, and I kept things like a lot of the Leaf contracts. We ended up with the one of the best pieces we have is, and we still have it, is the Maple Leaf banner from 1962. Now, this was funny. I used to get emails all the time from people saying to me, "How dare you call yourself the Ultimate Leafs fan? You're not the Ultimate Leafs fan. You're just this guy," and all so on and so forth. And I always say, "Listen, I didn't give myself that name. ESPN did a story on me, and they called me the Ultimate Leafs fan." As a matter of fact, Gene McBurney, who was a hockey agent, was a business partner of mine. We had a big discussion to change the name, because because I'm not a guy who wears a sweater, and paints my face and all that stuff going to games.
Right.
I take it very serious, and I have to look at it on a level as a professional, sort of a business type, approach when I'm talking to players and stuff like that. So, but Deb and I decided, you know what, it's got a bit of a catchy name. Let's just leave it. So, anyway, along those lines, I just thought that, I should just stay involved in it in a certain degree. And with that name, we just started reaching out to people, and they would, come back to us, and we started holding hockey events and all along those lines. I just stayed with it. And, just so for us here now, the few things I do collect, I ended up with the banner. And so these guys were all reaching out to me all the time, telling me stuff like, you're this, you're that. And I said, well, okay. So, well, I'm a guy. I have a bunch of things, and I have one of the banners. And I said, okay, well, I remember the banners were all hanging at the gardens that Cliff Fletcher put up, and they were all just the duplicates. And one had sold for like $70,000 at the auction. That's when I said, this is time to leave, because all this, these guys are buying stuff. They don't know what they're paying. It's going to all come back out in 10 years. And a lot of it has. So anyway, he said his father was the upholsterer at the gardens for 42 years. And he came to work one day, and the guys are doing the summer maintenance. And so what happened was, he saw on the ground, they had these tarps, but the tarps were actually the Stanley Cup banners. And they were all sort of torn and paint on them and ruined. And he was very upset about this. And he goes into his third floor office, or his workshop, and on the pallet was one banner left, the 62. So he took it and put it away. And of course, he phoned his son. His son, just hide that, Dad. We can't. That's the history of the Leafs. So anyway, he asked Ballard later if he could have the banner, and Ballard said, "Oh yeah, take it. I don't want that. Get that out of here." So he took it and he held it. And he held it it's sat in a blanket box, and they were, and then the family's name. His name was Norm Parsons, and his son was Wayne. And he ended up going to the same school I went to, and lived around the corner from me, but he's a few years older, so that's another whole coincidence. But anyway, he contacted and said they would like to do something with it, because they had taken it to a hockey tournament in Stratford. It was a huge success, and they thought this needs to go to a home. So he tried the Leafs, he tried the Hockey Hall of Fame, and then he approached us. And we worked out a deal, and we have it. And an interesting thing about the Stanley Cup banner is that it's 1962. So everybody knows the Bill Barocco story from 51. And they didn't win again until 62. So of all the banners to be destroyed, why did this one survive? So the Barocco mystique still lives on, and it lives in the banner. And the best part, though, Joe, was we had some of the players come over, and Johnny Bauer, when he came over with his wife to visit the room, we brought the banner out, and he was actually standing with tears in his eyes, because that's his first cup, and he's holding this banner, and we have pictures of that. And those are memories you never forget, And then the other one was, and Paul can tell you this one, when Bill Barocco's sister came to visit, we had stuff of his. We had the final program. We had a ticket from his game. And we had a letter his brother had written to some teams asking for tryouts for the two of them. So we pulled the letter down and had her read it. And she was standing there. And of course, she got a million questions to ask her. But she's standing there, and the tears are streaming down her face. And I just remember looking at Paul Pasco and saying, you know what, just leave it. This is one of these moments we just don't ask any questions. We just stepped away and left the family alone. So those are a couple of memories that will live with me forever.
Beautiful. Did you have any members of the Tragically Hip over?
Well, the funny part about it is, the funny part about it was, a friend of ours in the promotion business, he used to be the manager of the Hip. And we went to we were going to do one of these, ours called the Great Canadian Event. And it was going to be with the Olympics and with Jane Ruse for Can Fund to raise money. And so we were going to have this event where all these celebrities came, and people paid $2,000 to come to the event. And we needed a guest host. So I wanted to get Gord Downey. And his suggestion was, you don't want him because he's a bit of an introvert. He'll stand in the corner. He's not even a Leaf fan. The whole Bruins thing, and Harry Simmons' his godfather and all that stuff. But a couple of the other guys I was informed did want to come and see. And, so we had that with a few of the guys. We, Berkey had Michael Bublé land up to work with, come to perform at one of our events if we were going to do it again the following year. We had Jim Cuddy. They wanted to come over. We could never arrange a date. And the same with Geddy Lee. So all these guys, we had all these local Toronto guys were, starting to find out about this and wanted to come over. And of course, it was the influence of guys. I always like to think it's me, Joe, but it's not me. It was always, again, guys like Berkey and Debbie, they always want to come over. They always love Debbie, but, they want to come over and visit. And So to answer your question in a long roundabout way, which I'm very good at doing, yeah, they did, but they never got arranged because we just couldn't come up with the time.
Yeah, so your involvement, you're still involved as an appraiser, ultimatesportsappraiser.com. If you want to bring in Mike to have any appraisals done, and of course we want to touch on your other books, Ultimate True Tales from Beer League Hockey. Tell us about the book.
So I stopped playing for about 12 years because I had bad hips, and when I went back to play a little bit, I couldn't skate because and I had one hip bad and I had it replaced, and then the second one I was just breaking down. And when I retired, a buddy of mine, Andy Talkett in Markham, said you should come up and start playing with the boys up here. We're playing, it's beer league. It's it's not good, but just come and enjoy this, and it's fun. So I went. And it's funny being away from the game like that. And, I was 60 years old at the time, and 63 actually. And, I go in and you go in the room, and it was all of a sudden, it's like it was like 20. It's the same chirping at guys for making a mistake. It's the, same guy calling this guy cheapskate. It's the, guys sit in the same spot every game or every skate they have. So it was all the things that we're used to as kids, but here you are now, 40 years later, and it's still the same things. Like hockey players never lose those, sort of the superstitions or the traits or the routines that they have to play the game. And it was just all the same. And going to the bar, it was the same. Like that was the most important thing to go after and go and have a beer, who brought the beer. And so I started hearing all this stuff, and I thought, somebody should write a book on this. Like this is a book. And I thought, why don't I started taking notes. I carried my little notepad around with me, started interviewing guys. And I talked to probably 200 guys and up around Markham and out west. And I'd have people contacting guys by phone. And what Deb and I decided we were going to do is I don't feel right, making money off other guys' stories. So I thought what I would do is we'll do it for charity. So we started working with a company to put defibrillators in hockey rinks and community centers and use the proceeds for that. And we were having some success with it, but people really weren't. They always think you want something. So even though we were giving these defibrillators away, all they had to do was buy some books to help us defray the cost. And so anyway, what that has done is that has now led into us, working with the CLS, which I'm sure you're going to touch on, but. The book was just filled with all kinds of stories and things like there's a couple of favorites in there. One about, let's see, there's a cop, like there's ones with cops, firemen, crazy goalies, referees, anything you can imagine. So there was a cop one time who had a game late in Markham, 10 o'clock. He's on duty, but he's off basically at the same time. And he's on his way to the rink in full uniform to play. And all of a sudden he gets a call. Now, it turns out he has to arrest this guy. So you arrest this guy, and he's got him in the car. Now he thinks, now, if I've got this guy and I take him to the station, I'm going to miss my game. So what do I do? So he takes him to the rink, goes inside. You got to remember, it's 10 o'clock in the middle of the winter on a Sunday night. And he takes this guy and he goes, all right, listen to me here. He puts the handcuffs on him and handcuffs him to a seat in Markham Centennial and says, you hear from me really loud. I'll tell my number, and I'll let you go. So here's this guy with one hand tied to the chair, screaming at the guy on the ice. And all the guys in the bench going, who's that guy? And he goes, I don't know. And he let him go. So, see,
and he was charged with murder, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, well, it's just
not quite, but
that's
awesome.
And you get all the, there's a lot of crazy ones too, where, you get a guy who's a lawyer, a very straight-laced lawyer, and you've got, a cop. And what the cop would do, and this is another rink, he would just, to irritate this guy, he'd go and ask the girls on the street, who they are, the working girls, to come to the game and stand by the bench and cheer. And then he would bring them in the room after just to have a beer with them, just to irritate this guy. And it would do like all these little things. So the biggest takeaway from the book, Joe, is this. Once you cross the threshold of that dressing room door, whatever you do on that other side of the door doesn't matter. Because once inside the room, you're all the same. Everybody is on equal footing. And as a matter of fact, the more successful you are, the more likely you are to get gooned. And I can tell you, you can be one of the highest ranking judges in Canada, and your left winger may be the biggest drug dealer in Toronto, but guess what? He's only the guy that screwed up the pass to cost you a winning goal the following week. And that's it,
Right.
and that's really what it's all about. And it's the bonding of guys, sharing the stories.
Yeah.
The hockey's almost secondary. It's the bonding that goes to it. I had a guy playing one night on our team. He showed up to the rink and he was very upset because he forgot his little cooler of 3-pack of beer. He goes, just like a rookie, I left it on my driveway. He wasn't going to play. So he's sitting there sulking in the room, not going to play. And so finally the guys threw him 3 beers and he got dressed. And there's other guys who would sit in the room you have a Friday skate, and guys would come in the room. And if there wasn't 24 tall boys sitting in the room, they wouldn't get dressed until they were sitting there.
Yeah.
Well, the stories are just endless. And then there's some off-color ones in there that, we'll save for people reading the book. But it's just any guy who's read the book tells me they can relate to the story. So I'm not telling anything they don't know. I'm just highlighting some of the stuff that they experienced themselves playing the game.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. The teammates, as long as you put it on the tape, put that pass on the tape. I don't care what you do. What's out of the room? What's out of this dressing room? What's out of the rink? Yeah.
It's true. Or the guy, sorry, I was going to tell you, there was a guy too.
Yeah.
The guy standing outside the blue line, waving his stick for a pass, goal sucking it, and meanwhile his team doesn't even have the puck. Or the guys who, or the guy who's one of the worst players in the teams and thinks he's a good player. He's the first guy jumping over the boards to take the overtime penalty shot. And meanwhile, the guy who's got 35 goals in 20 games is sitting on the bench. Like all these things, and also grading of players. See, a player from 1 to 10, they grade him. Now, if the guy's an exceptional player, and he's not a nice guy, they can make amends depending on what they need. But if the guy's a good player, sort of, like a 6, 7, 8, and not a nice guy, he gets ranked a 4. Get rid of him. Like, you don't want that guy, because you want the guy who's going to show up with his beer, show up at the bar, and be one of the lads. And the other team can deal with his other problems, right? Or the guy who showed up one night at a guy told me a story. He comes on the ice and he's got a roll of tape in his hand, white tape and a black mark. And he goes, "Hey, can you put this on the bench for me?" And I goes, "What's that for?" And he said, "Oh, if I score tonight, that'll be my 500th goal in beer league. So I want to mark the puck." And the guy looked at her, "What?"
I can't say I ever kept track of my my beer league goals. So
yes,
the number. Although, but year by year, I knew what was going on. Yeah. So the ultimate road trip. What was the impetus for this work? You sort of touched on it a little bit.
Well, as the Ultimate Leafs fan, Deb and I used to get emails daily from people just asking, questions about the Leafs, talking about our collection. They'd view some of the things we did online. And they would always, they'd always be sharing these stories and trying to sell me things or asking for opinions on what's this worth. So all this stuff. And what became evident was, what is it about this team that hasn't won in over 50 years that's got such an allure from fans right across the nation and right across the world, basically. And we should find out. And I thought, what better way than to go out and meet the people directly and find out what it is. I mean, why are 6 guys from Winnipeg sitting in a rink in Minnesota in January, dressed up in all their Leaf gear, and the Leafs are fighting for a playoff spot, and it's 30 below zero outside, and these guys are jumping up and down and cheering and screaming? Why is that? I mean, one of the reasons is that, one of the historical things in the Maple Leafs is that starting in the 30s, when the games were broadcast on the radio by Foster Hewitt, they went across the country. And as you said before, it was either Montreal, Toronto, but the French version would be in Quebec and maybe down east somewhat, whereas the Leafs would be down east slightly, but mostly all out west. So this is these families back in the time of the 30s. The only station they would get would be Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday nights, and that would be the form of entertainment. The whole family would bond around the radio and listen to this. And this just carried on, and families then relayed these stories to generations further ahead. The war stories, like when Foster Hewitt, his broadcast would go to the troops overseas. I spoke at Sunnybrook Hospital a couple of years ago, and to a man, the veteran said, not only did they entertain him and motivate these guys to move on, it kept them alive, those recordings. So these stories are passed down to the kids. And all these things, they just carry this love of the Maple Leafs. And what I found was traveling that every rink, there was Maple Leaf fans everywhere, right across the country, and they would be there. And the game itself, yeah, they want them to win. But more importantly, they just wanted to see this team in person and just experience it and have that feel that, just bring back those memories from their childhood and what they've had passed down to them. And a lot of them were fans of the local team, whether it's Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, or Winnipeg, or, Montreal even. But it's just this history with the family. And, so I found all these stories. And so what I would do is we'd go to the rink, and Deb would work the social media, and I'm very superstitious. So I would go around, or if the Leafs are winning, I'd go around the rink 3 times pre-warm-up. Mm-hmm. And if they were winning, I'd stay in the same spot. If they're losing, I'd go around 4 times and pick a new spot. Then Deb would post that people would come and meet me. And I have to go and watch the warm-up. And if the Leafs were on a streak, I'd sit in the same spot. And I'd always watch and direct where they're doing. It's funny, when I spoke to Austin Matthews on one of the shows, I told him about, they used to see me at I'd go to the morning skates and everything a lot of times. So a lot of players knew who I was. And so anyway, I made a comment to him about his routine, and he said, well, Mike, I'm going to have to get you to remind me so I can keep the streak going, because I was telling about how I would only watch in a certain spot and watch how they did certain things, and then people would come and always ask me, I'd go and talk to them and say, we want a puck. And how do we get it? So I tell them, well, here's what they do. Lastly, the Martyr, the last 2 off the ice, they do this. They usually throw the puck here. They'll do it there. And I remember a lot of people have gotten pucks as a result. So I would do all these things and just accumulate these stories and relay them back to Deb. And she would then, answer, our Instagram and Facebook pages. And meanwhile, between the game, I'd be writing down all the names and all this kind of stuff of who I met. And then I'd go back to Old Town. I was writing a report for this post media place about all the Leaf games traveling. So now to write that. So it wasn't a party. I sat in the highest seats in the rink to make it. We wanted to make this sort of a busman's tour, where you go, we took planes, trains, automobiles, just like the old movie, and sat in the cheapest seats. I didn't eat the games. I never had one beer through the whole year. I didn't want alcohol in my breath, never ate. So I would do all these. I had the same routine all the time, but you know what? I wouldn't have traded it for anything. It was the most awesome thing I ever experienced.
You have used the proceeds from your books now to support, help try to find a cure for ALS. Now, ALS took the life of one of the all-time great Leafs, as we all know, Borje Salming. Nobody wore the blue and white more proudly than Borje. We had him on the show a few years back, and he talked about performing in front of the Leafs brass for the very first time after Jerry McNamara brought he and Inge Hammerström over from Sweden. We're just going to play a quick clip from that.
We looked up in the stands, and we saw Jimmy, Harold, and I think there was 10 of them. The whole management was standing up there, because the only one who had seen me actually was probably Jerry McNamara play hockey. So they really wanted to see how we were doing and if we could skate. So I told Inge, they said, listen, now let's skate. And they really showed them. And, of course, we skated around and were shooting the puck and everything. And that was, I think that was the thing we want to show them. And Jerry told me afterwards, and he said they were so impressed by our skating and shooting and everything. So I guess, and he said, because some of the management said, what the hell, what are we going to do with 2 Swedes here? They're not going to make it. But when we skated there, they look up to Jerry and said, holy mackerel. Jerry said, yeah, what did I tell you? So he was,
I knew it all along.
That was nice for him. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can't tell you how. Go ahead. Finish
I was going to say, we had him on the show too, and just Squid's famous story is that when he arrived with the Leafs, he said he had Borje Salming on one side and he had Ron Ellis on the other side. So it was like that cartoon where you see you got the devil on one shoulder and you got the angel on the other one. And which way do you go? You're trying to think. But so Borje was a great influence. He was He was very instrumental in Matt Sundin taking the C for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He said that was, I'm sure you said it on your show, it was the biggest regret of his career that he didn't take the C at the time, and he wishes he could have a do back and take that again. But he was just one of those guys. Every player in the team just loved the guy, and you could tell any Maple Leaf we've ever had, when Borje's name comes up, it's just nothing but complete respect and love.
And of course, another former Leaf Mark Kirton. He's been battling ALS now for a number of years. And of course, we had Mark on the show as well a couple of years ago. I asked him how he keeps his incredibly positive attitude, despite what he's been experiencing through this awful disease. Let's roll that, Vic.
If I'm down, everybody else is going to be down, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. And it doesn't matter whether it's family or friends or colleagues or what, but I try to stay upbeat, but it's hardest on the family because they'll see me when I have my down times, whereas nobody else will, right? So it's a little bit harder from that perspective, but I guess it's the athlete mentality, Joe. You just, when things are down, you pick yourself up and away you go. Listen, I played over 500 games in the American League, and one year, I think I got sent down 7 times. I mean, Gabby Boudreau likes to think that he was sent down more than me one year, but he's wrong.
Kurt's amazing. Tell us about your experience with Kurt.
Well, we had him on the podcast as well too, and I knew Kurt's when he was when I went to Raider days. It had these two kids show up. One kid from Stouffville, Ontario, was 14 years old, and he was running every big guy on the ice to make a name for himself. And his name was Keith Acton. And the other one was this cocky, good-looking, blonde-haired kid who came in. He was, I think, 15 at the time, and he had this bit of an attitude too in training camp. And his name was Mark Kirton. And both of them obviously went on to have pretty successful careers. So I knew Kurt's back then, but going up, he reached out about a year ago and said, with this ALS, that they were going to have an event to raise money for his ALS Super Fund. And they were going to do something on Ottawa to launch, and they were going to have an auction in February during the Four Nations. So in the Ottawa launch, Wayne Gretzky surprised him and showed up. Brendan Shanahan, of course, always steps up to help in anything he can. Wendell Clark, Daryl Sittler is another champion in this regard, steps up and does this. And so he asked me, what should we ask for as far as gifts to raffle off or prizes to raffle off, and what would the pricing be? So I said, sure, I'll help. So I suggested things like game day packages. Instead of just asking for sweaters and sticks and stuff like that, ask for game day packages where you get a morning skate, you maybe get a meet and greet with a general manager or a player, maybe dinner, drinks, and go to the game. Fans love this stuff. Berkey and I did a few of these, and they just went over tremendously. So sure enough, they did. And all 32 teams responded with great prizes, and you rarely see all 32 teams give stuff back because they get hounded every day of the week for charities, and there's all kinds of wonderful causes. So Deb and I, we had some money in the account from the beer league book that we thought, let's buy some of the lots, and what we'll do is let's turn around and re-raffle them so ALS wins twice. So we bought 8 of the lots, and what we're doing now is we're now raffling those off. And all you have to do is buy a raffle ticket for $20 Canadian, and you get one of my books. Maybe that's the downside. You get one of the books. So, because some people say keep the book. I've already got it. But buy raffle tickets, and you get a chance to one of the eight prizes. And just give you an idea, like one of them is one of the teams. I'll just read them to you: Colorado, San Jose, Nashville, LA, Philadelphia, Minnesota, St. Louis, and the Islanders are the 8 teams. And just to give you an idea, let's just pick the Colorado one. The Colorado one is 4 guests to attend the morning skate, 4 game tickets, dinner for 4 at the Ultra Mountain House Lounge in Ball Arena. And, you may probably you'll get a meet and greet as well. And every one of them is like that. And so these things are worth thousands of dollars and don't come along too often. So what our goal is we want to have an event, and we're just in the process of working that now. We're supposed to release the schedule got delayed this year for the NHL. So all these tickets now, we've gone, and with the help of guys like Jeff Jackson in Edmonton, the ALS team have been unbelievable helping put this together. And all the teams, guys like Luke Robitaille, the Nashville team, all these teams have been wonderful in responding and helping any way they can. So what we want to do is we want to have an event, and we want to present Mark the check, and then he will draw the 8 prizes. But we have to get to it. I want to hand him a check for $50,000. We're just a little over 42, and I'm beating the bushes everywhere. I'm not asking people. I'm begging people, please just reach out to me at our ultimateleafsfan.com site. DM me on Facebook. Debbie will answer you right back. I'll go anywhere to sell books. I went to a hunting club up north. I don't even know how to hold a gun. And these guys bought books. And I've spoken at Rotary clubs. I've spoken at golf tournaments. And everybody steps up. We've had guys like, former business partners, Mike Wackerly, Gene McBurney buying 200 books each. Another local business guy, he'll be mad that I mentioned this, but, Jeff Beattie buys 500 books. Perry DeLeese, he buys 100 books. Another guy bought 87 books in honor of Sidney Crosby for the, those 4 nations. But, all these guys are buying these, and then they're giving the books to either charity or to a hockey association. But really what you're buying are the raffle tickets. And the raffle tickets are $20. So folks, help us get there. I need $8,000, and we're going to host this event. And this Mark Kirton, and there's another kid, Louis Del Rey. They had an event in May for him, and that was 650 people showed up. They sell it out, and these people, and Deb and I went. I spoke at the event, and we sold books there. We sold almost 200 that night, and they had all kinds of other things to buy. And this Louis, he's 30 years old. 31 now when he got diagnosed. 30 when he was diagnosed with ALS. He's now 31. This guy will go anywhere to help. He says, Mike, just call me, I'll come. He came and met me in Whitby. He lives in Stouffville to come to an event. And this kid can barely walk. He gets himself around, and he's just like Mark. They don't give up, and their positive attitude is just infectious. These guys are unbelievable human beings, and how can you not help them?
Yeah. Kurt's just crazy nice and crazy amazing and crazy accommodating and just a wonderful human being, always has been. And that's beautiful. So here you go. So ultimateleafsfan.com, Instagram at the Ultimate Leafs Fan, Facebook, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. And, you get a book is great,
or the beer league
awesome.
One.
Or the beer league one, right?
Or the beer league one.
And the beer league one, right? So
either one.
You get a book, you get a raffle ticket, and it's only $20, and then raffle is freaking phenomenal. You can win a prize of a lifetime. So there's no reason not to buy a raffle ticket today. Before we go, you mentioned your podcast with former Leafs great Rick Vaive, the captain. 3-time 50-goal scorer. Tell us about the podcast a little bit. Just the fun you must have with Squid.
Well, he's the greatest. Okay, so I've known him for a long time. I played with one of his buddies in Port Alberni for a couple of years, so I got to know him way back in the '80s when he got traded to the Leafs. But the funny part about it is we were both talking, and he'd come, and again, Squid lives in Niagara Falls. Him and guys like Steve Ludzik. Ralph Mellenby, these guys, anytime we'd hold an event, no problem. They drive down and help support our cause without even blinking an eye and ask for nothing. And so we became a little closer buddies. And so he wanted to do something. So we came up with the idea to do a podcast. So we started off, and it's just sort of built from there. And what we do now, but the problem is we've had some problems with the scheduling and trying to get everybody together. So we've been doing a Leaf stream on a weekly basis talking about the Leafs. But some of the characters, and Joe, I know you've had a bunch of the guys on too, but it's the stories. And as I always told Squid when we started is, look, nobody cares that you passed it to X went in and roofed the puck. They can go and look at that at YouTube. What they want to know is who paid for the beer after and who did what. Like the Doug Gilmour story. Or you get a story like this.
Yeah.
Like Ethan Morrow. We always ask all these guys about the interview questions because, they always grill these guys on coming to the National Hockey League, and these are 17, 18-year-old kids. So Ethan Morrow was kind of cocky. Now, there's a guy you wouldn't even imagine. He's one of the funniest guys we ever had on. And see, he says, he goes into the Boston interview, and Harry Sinden, a pretty intimidating figure because he's a legendary man. The room's full of
Right.
scouts, and here he is, 18 years old. He didn't think Boston was going to draft him. So Harry's grilling him with really hard questions and going at him pretty good. And so the final question was, and if you make the Boston Bruins, what number you want to wear? And without missing a beat, he says 4 or 8. And Harry Sinden points at him and goes, get the you-know-what out of here right now. And he threw him out of the office, and all the scouts with their heads in their hands, trying not to laugh. So, and then, Tiger, we spoke to Tiger an hour before the podcast, and then an hour and a half after speaking to him for an hour and a half. One story after the other, so what it's like talking to these guys. The stories are just endless. And, the following we have, they love the stories, and they want to hear the behind the scenes stuff, what goes on, and, how the stories sort of filter themselves right to from where just from not scoring a goal. And again, it comes back to my memorabilia. And if I can tell you one quick story, when Wayne Gretzky came to visit our room, we had a picture of his. We had a section that designated to him, but we also had one picture of him, the print with him scoring, the Leroy Neiman print with him breaking the Howe record, and it's a great shot. So he came down the stairs, and that was sitting on the wall. And I pointed at him. Now, what happened is I actually had one of the 78 Team Canada Junior sweaters. That was the first year they put the World Junior team together. It happened to be Vive's sweater, and I got it by accident from somebody who gave it to me, basically. And so above that was the photo, the lithograph. And I pointed at the sweater, and I said, that must bring back memories to you from 78. Because remember, Bill Derlago was supposed to be the center on that team, not Gretzky. And Bill Derlago had 92 goals in 53 games or whatever it was. And Gretzky replaced him when he hurt his knee. That's how he got to play in that. And, the rest is history. So and I must bring back some memory. And he goes, oh, it sure does. But Mike, I got a better story for you. And the one on Leroy above. I go ahead. He goes, well, when that happened, I said, yeah, that happened. One of the biggest sporting events ever.
That thing happened, yeah.
Yeah. He says, Leroy used to come to a lot of our games. And he said that when that happened, he was in the room with Luc Robitaille. And he said to Luc, hey, Luc, do you want me to do something to commemorate this special event? And Luc like, really? And he goes, yeah, I'll do it for you guys. Oh, great. Go ahead. So off Leroy goes. And, about 6 months later, they call, and they're going to have a special dinner. He presents Wayne with the original copy. He gives and each player got a copy of the lithograph. And then Leroy handed each guy a bill. Charged them. So Wayne, by this time, is telling the story and is bent over laughing because the players were mouths all dropped. And if you look it up, it says the LA Kings commissioned Leroy Neiman to do this. He hustled them. So, as I like to say, every story has tentacles and they continue. The continuation of that is Eric Bloom, who did the Legends Row, the sculptures at the front of Scotiabank.
Yeah.
I got to know him. He met me, and we got to know each other. He came over to my place for one night for an event, and we were talking. I tell that story, and Eric says, well, I can tell you, that's Leroy to a T because he got Muhammad Ali the same way. And I knew Leroy because he was a friend of mine. And so he said, when Muhammad Ali fought Foreman again, or another one of his fights, he said to me, Leroy, Muhammad, you would like me to do something to commemorate the night? And he said, why are you calling me, Leroy? And he goes, no, you want me to do something? And he goes, no, Leroy, why are you calling? And he goes, no, and he knew I'm not asking, because he got him once before. He hustled Muhammad and charged him. He goes, no. So, that's what collecting and stories are all about.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, final question. We're partnered with a group called Believe, Become, Be You. It's a mentorship program for kids 10 to 17, inspired by the late Sean Gindy, led by Papa Jack Gindy. What's a message you would have, Mike, for any kids who might be struggling to find their way in today's world?
Well, that's a great question. The thing about it is, for any kid, never give up your dream. But look at this young girl in the tennis now, just the 18-year-old. And look at the personality on her. Like, she's just bubbly, great personality, full of energy. And how can you not cheer for her? So, anything is possible in this world. And, the idea is, look, if you keep your head down, you're always going to be down. Look up and try to look for something positive in your life. there's always somebody you can reach out to talk to that can inspire you. There's somebody else that you can talk to you can blow some steam off, whatever it takes. But get involved in something that you enjoy, you have some passion about, and devote your life to it, or devote your passion to it as best you can. And the harder you work at it, I'm telling you, I remember the first job I ever got when I went for this. I was kind of a cocky guy, and I was playing hockey. And so one of this girl I knew who was a placement agent said, you need to get a job, because if hockey doesn't work, you need something to go fall back on. And I said, well, I'll get you a job interview. So anyway, I remember that so I went for these job interviews, and I said, but I'm going to be leaving in August. And she said, well, that's okay. And this was like, April. And so, okay. So anyway, I go in and I had 5 interviews, and this was appearing to her and anybody for low-end jobs, like on Bay Street and all these places. So I went to 5 interviews. It was all the same questions. And I remember the girl finally said to me at the end something about, I wasn't even listening. And I remember when I got the job, they said to me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I said, 5 years? I don't know, I'm going to be in 5 hours. Well, actually, I know I'm going to be. I got to go to the gym at 5, and I'm playing hockey at 8 tonight. And she goes, well, all my students come in here, all my applicants come in here, and they know exactly, my university grads. Now, I'm not a university grad. So they said, They know they want to be a vice president, they want to be this, they want to be that. And I go, whoa, you want me to say that to you? I'll tell you that all day long. But I'll tell you what happens if I start this job on Monday and I don't like it? How am I going to be a vice president if I don't even like the job? I've never even done it. And here's another thing. If I'm so worried about being a vice president, that means I'm not going to be focusing on that job. I'm going to be looking for stars ahead, and that's going to make you look bad. So you rather hire a guy like me? I'm going to come in, and you got to sell me that I like the job, and I'm going to work my best at it, and hopefully you will recognize how good a work I'm doing and advance me. And I remember she said, that's one of the best answers I've ever heard. When can you start? And I said, how much are you paying? And it was like $600 a month. And I said, okay, I got to check. I got, okay, 600, I'll take that, because it was the best before that was 575.
The math.
But the point being is, look at what you have in front of you, deal with it the best you can, don't give up, because all you need is one lucky break. And I'm telling you, as they always say about good hockey players or any good athlete, if you're any good, they'll find you. Look at Pavel Datsyuk. Look how they found him in Siberia.
Wow.
In a small rink, in a small league. They'll find you. So the idea is never give up, work as hard as you can, and somebody will recognize your efforts. Believe me on that.
Right. And that big break could be just around the next corner. You just 100%. Never know. Right.
100%.
Well, Mike, thank you for taking this time. It's been awesome and great catching up. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Joe. And guys, don't forget, come back to me on the ALS. Come on, $20, guys. You can't even buy beer and wings for that. And this gives you a chance to go to a game, and they'll give you the beer and the wings.
A book and a ticket. And Mike will even sign it for you. There you go.
All right, 100% no. Okay. Thank you, Joe.
When we come back, Ken Reagan talks about playing with Leafs legend Borje Salming. Back after this.
In 1992, the best locally owned restoration companies came together with one goal: to make disaster recovery better for Canadians. And to this day, DKI remains one of the only 100% Canadian-owned disaster restoration groups in the market. Fire, flood, or storm damage. When things go wrong, the right help makes all the difference. With the right tools and local expertise, we handle everything from emergency response to full-scale restoration, getting homes and businesses back on track the right way. Because a home is more than 4 walls, a business is more than a building, and recovery is about more than repairs. When you choose DKI, you're choosing a company that's put Canada first since 1992. Locally owned, nationally backed, Canadian through and through. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Hearing loss doesn't have to mean missing out. At Hear Canada, we help you take charge with a complimentary hearing assessment because confidence starts with clarity. Discover hearing aids, accessories, and expert care at your local hearing center. Not sure where to start? Our Hearing Health Guide has the basics for you or a loved one. It worked for us. Book your free assessment today at hearcanada.com. Conditions may apply.
NHL debut 83-84 season. Your first game was a 48-save effort against Hartford. You got the win. Then your second start. Here you are, 19 years old, facing the Calgary Flames. This is your first home start at Maple Leaf Gardens. And in this game, we have a shot right there. You mentioned Borje, who helped the opposition chances cracking down. There you are in goal. I just want to stop and talk here for a moment about Borje. What do you remember about Salming, the King?
Yeah, he was for a young rookie. He was like the consummate. He was one of my favorites. I remember going to a hockey tournament in Prince Edward Island and our Billet family. Prince Edward Island and our Billet family. I think it was Somerset. The kid had all the Toronto Maple Leafs on his door, and I remember looking at Borje Salming and what an icon he was. He was kind of like a hero. And to have the opportunity to get drafted by Toronto and play with him and then listen to him and watch him. And he was just a super guy. And I think there's always a special bond between, more so between defensemen and goaltenders, especially when you have a well-seasoned Hall of Fame defenseman like Borje, and to have the opportunity to work with him and, him helping you out. And, I always remember the guy coming down on the wing. And Borje would step into him and go to force him to the outside and step into him. If he didn't get him, he would loop around back with a sweep check and then get him that way. And at first it was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then all of a sudden it's like, that's his signature move, and he would get them 9 times out of 10. He was an awesome, good player and just a great teammate. And I'm very, very lucky to have the opportunity to play with him.
Discover the secret to timeless vitality at Renew Medical Center in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Our specialists unravel the science of aging, tailoring plans to defy its effects. Experience cutting-edge regenerative therapies such as stem cells and exosomes, addressing aging at its core.
It's a wonderful spot, and I highly recommend it for whatever you may need, whether you just want to feel better, you want to look better, have basically a quality of life, just to ramp it up a little bit as we age.
Liberate yourself from aging-related concerns, where accountability, technology, and passion for regenerative medicine converge. Begin your path to peak health and wellness with us. Schedule your appointment today at renewpv.com and elevate your quality of life.
Parents, what's the biggest fear for kids 10 to 14? A future they think they can't handle. At Believe, Become, Be You, we know confidence in the future is a habit we can build. Our course doesn't just prepare kids for the future, it seeds them with skills they will use now. For a limited time, the I Believe in Me Foundation is offering the first 1,000 kids and their parents 1 year free access. This priceless opportunity will save you over $2,000. This isn't just a course. It's a journey in developing life-enhancing skills that will grow with your child, fostering gritty minds, creative futures, and better bonds. Get signed up now at BelieveBecomeBeYou.com. That's BelieveBecomeBeYou.com.
And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great people. We highly recommend them all. Thank you for your support of Canadian sports. A reminder that the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, wherever you get your podcast from. Also, check out the show on YouTube. All of our past great shows are on there, clips and shorts. Like and subscribe. It is free. Our socials, at Joe Swiss Tilley on Instagram and Threads. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show on Facebook. Thanks once again to Mike Wilson for joining us. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more. Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. Let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. I'm Joe Tilley, and this fall I want you to join me for the adventure of a lifetime in Peru. We're talking about a 9-day guided journey through some of the most awe-inspiring sights on Earth, starting at just $19.99. We'll explore Lima, Peru's lively capital. You'll experience rich history, beautiful architecture, and world-class cuisine. You'll also wander the vibrant streets of Cusco, where Inca heritage blends seamlessly with colonial charm, and visit the stunning Sacred Valley, known for its dramatic landscapes, ancient Inca ruins, and charming traditional villages. And the big moment? We'll ride the scenic Inca train to spend a night in Machu Picchu village, waking up early to witness a magical morning light over the ancient citadel, a once-in-a-lifetime experience you'll never forget. Craving more? Extend your trip with a stay at a luxury Amazon lodge, or visit Lake Titicaca and meet the locals on the floating islands. This all-inclusive package covers international and domestic flights, expert guided tours, entrance fees, and stays at hand-picked hotels. And here's the kicker. Book now to receive a free upgrade to first-class boutique-style hotels and a direct flight from Toronto on selected dates. Don't miss it. Let's discover the magic of Peru together. Rooted in 60 years of tradition, Sleepy Hollow is a private golf club with a friendly community of members just minutes from Toronto. With mature trees and rolling fairways, Sleepy Hollow provides a challenging and enjoyable experience for passionate golfers. Enjoy great golf, amazing dining, and a picturesque patio second to none. Visit sleepyhollowcountryclub.com.